Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about promising on delivery and over promising. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do I stop my stakeholders from over promising on deliveries? Well, you embarrass them. That's one way. That's the hard way. Or you educate them. That's probably the best way. But it's not as fun as embarrassing them. What I mean by embarrassing them is that you see, whenever a stakeholder is promising that, oh, we're going to deliver in this time and that time, if they're too thick to understand that they need to synchronize with their engineering team before they say when something's going to be done, they are putting themselves in a risk position and they're putting you in a risk position. Like, this is something that's very fun to see, that in some cases this is a systematic thing where you have companies where this is just happening constantly, and the solution is always, always that the developers need to work overtime. That is the solution, right? The problem with that is that that works, I'm very sorry to say, and it works because the developers are too chicken shit to actually stand up for what should be done, and that is that you set expectations correctly and you have a qualified salesperson or product owner or someone like that in charge who understands the process of software delivery, and that they simply allow it to continue happening when you comply over and over and over. If you, on the other hand, have the perspective that, you know what, if you consistently over promise on delivery and you're constantly working overtime, what you're in essence doing is that you are enabling the company to squeeze more work out of you and pay you less. In essence, what you're doing is that you're working for less money than you originally agreed upon. That is the effect of what's happening, and some developers seem to be very fine with doing this. I'm not. I'm very vocal about the fact that I'm not willing to do that, because in my mind, there is no difference between that level of incompetence and a developer who should be fired for consistently producing bugs or causing delays or costs or things like that. If the developers are supposed to be held accountable for the quality of the work that they do and the skills that they have, then I expect the exact same thing from my PO and my sales department. Otherwise, they can keep the job. I can definitely go somewhere else. And I think that you should have the same attitude. But if you want to help the situation, you have to think as a PO or a salesperson. Now, one of the things that you should know about being in sales is that if you are well, it depends on the salesperson as well, but you have to think about their position when they're talking to the customer. They are managing a relationship. And that relationship is very important because this customer is paying them to do something for them, and it's the thing that is paying the salaries in for all the people in the company. Now, if the customer is unhappy, that's not a very fun position because you run the risk of losing the money. And so in many cases very inexperienced or weak salesperson or PO will comply with everything that the customer is requesting because they don't have confidence in their ability to maintain the relationship with that customer. That is a problem. You see, every time you say yes, you create a situation where you have to comply, and complying is a problem. And the customer, they may not actually know what they want. They might actually cause a lot of problems if they just get whatever they want all the time. And it is the role of the salesperson or the PO or whoever to make sure that things that the customers, what's best for the customer is happening. If you just say yes, it's like indulging a child who just asks for candy all the time. You keep on giving the kid candy until the kid gets sick, and that's not going in this scenario that's going to end with the customer leaving. I've seen this happen before where you would comply with all the things that the customer wants, and because you're not actually doing the right things, the solutions aren't actually turning out all that well. But you're complying, But that doesn't matter, because now that the customer has what they want and it's not working the way that they want it to work, they're gonna they in this case they went somewhere else. They terminated the relationship and said, no, this product is not is not working out for us. We're gonna go either make our own solution, or we already have another company who knows what they're doing. This happens. You have no idea how often this happens. So that's something that you can't you can coach your PO into understanding this, and like explain that like there is such a thing as tech depth and like stability of features and things like that, and you can use all of this in order to try to convince them. But I think that another very effective strategy to deal with this, which I have used in every single company I've worked with so far, and it has worked exceedingly well, is to understand that if you deal with a salesperson or a PO that has the tendency to say yes, the only time they will say no or stop themselves from just saying yes, 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 of course, because remember, they want to make the customer happy, is if they are unsure about if this is going to work. Are we going to be able to do this? Now, if they are not mature enough to know this themselves, you have to educate them. The way that I've done this is that every single week we work usually in an agile fashion. So by the end of every sprint, we have a small demo where we walk through the features of the portal, or not the portal, like the product itself. We walk through the things that we have made and the things that we have built, and we just show this is roughly how it works. Because remember, like your salespeople, they might pretend like to your customer that they know how the entire system works. They don't. They never do. It's impossible to keep track if it's a fairly large system. They can't have all of that stuff in their head. But what you can do is that you can showcase at each step how things are working, how do these different features work, and have them just look at it. It becomes an education piece, because if they know what the system can do, if they have a fairly good understanding of where the system is today and they will be able to, I promise you, it never fails. They will always sit there and point out feature flaws and bugs and stuff like that, and there you have some free testing and QA work that you can add to your backlog. This gives them a sensation of understanding. They now know in a more direct way how the system is doing right now, and so when they get to the point where they want to say yes, they now actually have something in the back of their head that tells them, well, no, actually, now that I think about it, they're asking for us to build this. But just the other week, I saw that we don't really have that. We have something like it, but not exactly the thing that they are looking for. And now, because of their education, because their product education, they can actually stop themselves from just saying yes, because their mind is now processing more information than, oh, I'm just going to make the customer happy. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're dealing with a PO or a salesperson who's over-promising on deliveries all the time towards your customers, you can do one of two things usually. Either you can play hardball with them and hold them accountable for their actions, because they are accountable. They can say no, and they don't have to do this. And if they have to, then their company is not sustainable, or their company is not sustainable. The other thing that you can do is that you can use education and showcase the product on a regular basis to educate your sales and POs and so forth, so that they understand roughly how the system works. Because if you can make them understand it roughly, that gives them more to think about before they say yes to everything. Because I can promise you this thing: no PO and no salesperson is ever going to give the customer a yes to a request if they know that we're not going to be able to do this, or they're going to be really unhappy with the solution. And that starts the dialogue that should be happening all the time, because there should be a dialogue with the PO and the engineers as much as humanly possible. That's the cross-functionality you may have been hearing about. It is enormously useful for quality of service and happy customers. Have a great day.